Hey, everybody! You get the Mr. Seriously Home edition this week, so feel quite honored. Wasn't able quite to get to my videos at school this week, so I have to do them from my home. You know, we've had a wild week as far as these elections go. You know, I keep thinking it's going to be over any minute, but as I sit here talking to you, it goes on and on and on. Although, as I sit here talking to you, I suspect that it will be over before Monday. I suspect even on this day, Saturday, that it'll be over. But alas, we have to move on from our election coverage, and our new unit is going to be about the legislative branch. And I've got some notes that we're going to take, so make sure you're filling out the guided notes as we go along. Here it is. Sorry. Delay. Ah, ha, ha. Here we go. Using my own personal computer here. So we're talking about the legislative branch. Hopefully you can see me, but you can't, can you? Weird. Let me see if I can make this work better. It might just have to be this way. So we're talking about the legislative branch, right? So we're talking about the House of Representatives and the Senate. And sometimes this is called congressional membership. The founders did not intend to make Congress a privileged group, but instead they intended to give it more power than any other branch of government. The Constitution emphasized the importance of the lawmaking branch by describing it in Article 1. James Madison said Congress is the first branch of government. The U.S. Congress is a bicameral legislature, meaning that it's made up of two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. In 1787, most delegates to the Constitutional Convention agreed that a bicameral legislature was best. They were following the precedent of English Parliament and laws. So each term of Congress begins on January 3rd, ending in odd years. For example, the 109th Congress began its term in January of 2005, and the 110th Congress began its term in January of 2007. Each congressional term is 2 sessions or meetings, and a session lasts 1 year and includes, of course, breaks and holidays. Until the 20th Amendment was ratified in 1933, congressional sessions did not formally end until March. This left a 4-month period between the elections and when new members began to serve. This time delay was shortened when the session was moved to January. So, Congress remains in session until its members vote to adjourn. If the Congress does adjourn, the president has the power to call it back into a special session in emergencies. So like wartime, or if he wants something special to be done, in like the pandemic, for example. With 435 members in the House of Representatives, it is the largest of the two. The Senate has 100, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The Constitution does not set the number of representatives in the House. It simply states that the House seats must be apportioned or divided among the states based on population. So if a state has more people, it has more representatives in the House. If a state has less people, it has less representatives in the House, etc. So qualifications in terms of office. The Constitution set the qualifications for the election to the House of Representatives. Representatives must be at least 25 years of age. They must be a citizen of the United States for at least 7 years. Traditionally, representatives live in the district they are elected in, pretty much have to. Members of the House are elected to 2-year terms. So every 2 years, all 435 members must run for re-election. It's unique in that way. Here's a picture of your congressman. This is kind of, it isn't this way anymore. I should really update this. But the control of the House and the Senate, all right? Actually, the Republicans still control the Senate, but the House is actually currently controlled by the Democrats. So qualifications for those terms of office. Although 90% of all House representatives are reelected, it provides with great continuity. If a representative dies or resigns in the first session of Congress, the state must hold a special election to fill that vacancy. In order to assign representatives on the basis of population in the House, the Census Bureau takes a national census or population count every 10 years. It's in the Constitution. Each state's population will determine the number of representatives it has. States with slow growth or a population decrease can lose seats in the House from year to year. For example, Ohio has actually lost seats over the last few years, while states with population growth can gain seats in the House. So Florida might be an example of a state that's gained some seats over the years. People like to move to Florida. After the state finds out their new representation for the next 10 years, each state legislature draws the boundaries, or congressional districts. All right, congressional districts are the areas within a state that each member represents. Each district has one member in the House. The process for setting up new district lines after reapportionment is called redistricting. In 2006, the Supreme Court ruled that legislatures may redraw congressional districts in the middle of a decade, rather than only after a U.S. Census. So over the years, some legislatures have abused the redistricting power. They did so in two ways. One, by creating congressional districts of very unequal populations by gerrymandering. We'll talk about that in a moment. All right. I'd write that down. Now, also, there are some important Supreme Court cases to think about. 2 years later, in Reynolds v. Sims, the courts held that Equal Protection Clause of the Fourth Amendment required the seats in both the houses of Alabama state legislature to be apportioned on population size. In 1964 Georgia case, Westbury v. Sanders, the court ruled that the Constitution clearly intends that a vote in one congressional district was to be worth basically as much as a vote in another congressional district. This person has become known as the one-person, one-vote rule. Today, each congressional district contains roughly about 650,000 people, or at least about there. It can't be too far off. After the 1990 census, several states drew new district lines to increase the voting power of ethnicity and ethnic minority representation. It also tended to concentrate Democratic vote-leaving neighbor districts more than Republicans. This was the case in North Carolina, where the Supreme Court ruled that their redistricting map violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Basically, it said that they were discriminating in their redistricting. The court said that the plan used race as a predominant factor in drawing the districts. Eventually, though, in 2001, they managed to have a plan upheld. Historically, gerrymandering, state legislatures have abused their power to divide congressional districts by gerrymandering. Now, gerrymandering is the drawing of district boundaries to give one party an electoral advantage. When one party is dominant in the state legislature, it often tries to draw boundaries to ensure victory in the future. So, for example, this is the North Carolina congressional districts. You'll notice that each of these districts is numbered, and each of these districts elects one congressman to the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. You'll notice how awful funny they look. I mean, these districts are all over the place. Just look at District 12 or District 4. I mean, what is this? I mean, it makes no sense. Well, here's what they do. You'll see here in 2010 the North Carolina congressional districts, all right? You'll notice that there are some that are controlled by Democrats and some that are controlled by Republicans. Now, the Republicans control the state legislature of North Carolina, so they get to redraw the districts. And in 2012, they redrew the districts so that they gained more seats at the federal level. Notice how after they redrew the district, there are now less Democrats that are elected in the North Carolina delegation to the United States House of Representatives. Notice how they eliminated this district over here entirely, and another district down here that they cut out. Now, when it comes to gerrymandering, there are two types called packing and cracking. Packing a district means drawing the line so they include as many of the opposing party's voters as possible. Crowding the opposition's voters into one district makes the remaining districts safe for the majority party's candidates. Cracking means dividing an opponent's voters into other districts to weaken the opponent's voter base. So the Supreme Court has ruled that congressional districts must be compact and contiguous. So what we mean by that is physically adjoining, all right? They can't be broken into two parts. This requirement, plus the one-person, one-vote rule, excuse me, has cut down on the worst cases of gerrymandering. Nevertheless, the competitive struggle of the two-party system continues to fuel the practice of gerrymandering. You'll notice here Ohio's congressional districts in 2002. You know what? They don't look so wild, really. I mean, not too bad. I mean, they're a little odd. I mean, this one's kind of weird. But really, you know, they're sort of, they look normal-ish. But then you look at how they drew it in 2012, and it's like, oh my. Here we live in District 4, and it looks like some people say a duck. And you have whatever this one is here, District 1, and District 11 and 13. I mean, this is just And District 3, I mean, this is basically Columbus, Ohio city limits. Basically, they redrew these districts to give the Republicans an advantage. Notice how the Democrats are literally cut into small districts, and the Republicans make up a majority of the districts. Notice the vote totals, too, and how dominated these districts are by Republicans. Feel free to watch this video. It tells you more about packing and cracking. Now, according to the Constitution, the Senate shall be composed of 2 senators from each state. Thus, each state is represented equally. There are 100 senators in today's Senate. The Constitution provides that senators must be at least 30 years old, citizens of the United States for 9 years before election, and also legal residents of the state they represent. All voters of each state elect senators at large or statewide. Senators have no particular district. Like those of the House, Senate elections are held in November during even-numbered years. Senators, too, begin their term on January 3rd, after the November elections. The Constitution provided the Senate the continuity by giving them 6-year terms instead of the 2 in the House, and providing that only 1/3 of senators run for re-election every 2 years. Most senators win re-election. If a senator dies in office, they're actually appointed by the governor to fill the vacancy. Now, salaries and benefits have changed over the years. And while this isn't that important, I'm going to run through these slides so you can take a look at how things have changed so much over the years. Notice how they only make $6, $17.89. Eventually, there was actually an amendment passed that stipulated when they can raise their pay. Members also enjoy all sorts of other benefits, including a lifetime pension and a nice gym. Also, there are some other members. They can say with other perks. Notice how that on the floor of the Senate or the House, members can literally say whatever they want without being sued. It's important to be able to speak your mind. Also, another privilege is that basically they have the power to punish their members too. Current makeup of your congressional voting groups. Some characteristics of congressmen to look at. This talking about incumbents and how hard it is to win other terms. And that is it. Somehow, I finished all 39 slides in the required time, which was my main concern for this lecture. Now, don't forget, of course, if I move too fast, you can pause, rewind, fast forward, go back, and all that jazz. But Congress is an interesting beast, and I want you to particularly go back and make sure you know gerrymandering, because your next 2 days' activity is the gerrymandering game, which I'll, of course, explain in the video instructions. Good luck out there, guys.